Hello aqua friends, welcome to my channel. My name's Nicole and today we are going to do a wet in wet watercolor landscape. And I just wanted to show you these cards that I make to pick out my colors. I always refer to these swatches before I do a project, and I have a scrap piece of paper on the side to practice some techniques that I have in my mind before I start the actual project. So to get very soft and fluffy clouds, we want to wet our paper really well for the sky. So take your time. Obviously I sped up this video, but you want to wet your paper for a good minute or so, wetting just the top part where the sky is going to go. And I start laying down my blue. I decided to use manganese blue and cerulean blue. And I'm leaving a lot of white space, as you could tell. And to get some hard edges, you could even use a piece of paper towel like I did. Your sort of negative painting, you have to think about painting the sky and leaving the white areas for the clouds. It looks very soft, very wispy, very realistic. Now, there are some gray clouds in the foreground, and the trick to getting these in is I'm using a very dry brush. The paper is starting to dry, and if you were to have a very watery mixture, because you want a light gray, you're going to make blooms in your very perfect sky. So you want to use a very dry brush to get that gray in. And it's just very subtle, but it just adds to the dimension of the sky. So as long as you're careful not to hit the parts of the sky that you've already done, you could also lay down your foreground wet on wet. So I started off by coming almost right up to the area that I had just painted on the sky. And this is actually a train track, so I stopped where the dark line of the train track is, and I wetted the bottom, and now I'm dropping in all those beautiful raw ombres, burnt ombres, a little bit of burnt sienna. I have some browns in there, and I'm just laying down that darkness in the foreground. And I'm using a very tiny fan brush to mimic the vegetation on the ground. So using your fan brush, really dry, medium amount of paint, very wet paint will give you many different effects. I'm putting in the very dark line where the train tracks are with a script liner brush. A little bit of vegetation right above the tracks just to try to blend that in a little bit. So I'm putting in the foreground as much as I can before I have to let everything dry. To get the trees in, I let everything dry, and I am using this mini mop brush, and I'm using it extremely dry. I am actually wiping off the pigment on a piece of paper towel first, to make sure that I just get a very light touch, a very light footprint, if you will, of those bristles. And it looks very kind of lacy, like far off distant trees. You could also use a very old brush and separate the bristles right down to the furrow. By pressing down on the furrow of your paintbrush will kind of spread out the bristles, and it makes a very good texture brush to put in distant trees and vegetation. And as you can see how I have the bristles of that brush spread out. And it just makes the finest, laciest sort of effect of these far off distant trees. And of course, at this point, we are working wet on dry, and that is pretty much the only part of the painting that we did do wet on dry. The biggest part of the landscape was done wet on wet. It is a very nice, relaxing, simple landscape that I'm bringing you today for our Fast and Fun Fridays. If you would like to learn more about the products that I used today, please check out the links in the description below. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial today, and I will see you next week. Have a great weekend, guys. Bye for now.